First of all, I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers. I'll start with Christina over here. As co-founder of Ethical Metalsmiths, Christina Tatiana Miller has over 14 years of experience bringing matters of environmental responsibility to the forefront in the jewelry field. As executive director of Ethical Metalsmiths, she helped grow a vibrant community of jewelers committed to social and environmental responsibility. In July 2015, Miller stepped down as executive director of EM to start Christina T. Miller Consulting, providing mentoring and services to companies as well as individuals wishing to advance their social and environmental goals. Thanks for being here, Christina.
Thank you.
Next, I'll introduce Jamie McClinchy. Jamie has a background in fine arts and jewelry design and comes to us representing Melissa Joy Manning, Incorporated. As a design and development manager, she oversees production of the jewelry from concept to completion, and she actively participates in responsible sourcing of materials used in the collection. Since its inception 20 years ago, Melissa Joy Manning has had a focus in socially and environmental responsible practices, which has permeated basically every aspect of their business. Melissa was one of 3 winners of the 2012 CFDA Lexus Eco Fashion Challenge and is currently serving as co-chair for the CFDA Sustainability Committee, as well as part of the advisory board for this year's CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative. Thanks, Jamie, for being here. Next, we have Blair Lauren Brown, who was born in a 112-year-old legacy of handcrafted jewelry in Alaska and is devoted to working in the same tradition as her family before her. All of her pieces in her collections are finished and designed using raw uncut diamonds and 24-karat nuggets of gold from her studio in Brooklyn. Blair is deeply committed to sustainability and preservation and is able to honor this commitment by sourcing raw gold from ethically operated family mines, her carat gold and silver from certified recycled suppliers, and her raw stones from responsible sources, guaranteeing conflict-free stones. Thanks for being here, Blair. And then last but not least, we'll introduce Wing Yao. She's the designer behind New York-based brand Wake. Founded in 2012 with a desire to merge her sculpture and art experiences with the intimacy of jewelry, Wake has now evolved into a full line of fine jewelry items distinguished by the use of stones set in innovative ways that break the traditional architecture of conventional settings. Wake was recently named one of Forbes 30 Under 30 and is one of the 10 finalists for this year's CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative. Wing's goal is to develop a responsible practice driven by art and design. Thanks for being here, Wing. Okay, so now I'm going to give it up to the panelists to introduce their companies and themselves for about 10 minutes. And then after that, we'll start. I'll start with the panel questions that we've prepared. And hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for everyone who might have a question of their own to ask that. We'll start with Christina.
Thanks. Yeah, I had it on a timer. Okay, you can put the timer back on. It was just going. Looks like it's going. Yeah. Right? I think so. They're on automated. Anyway. Okay. Good for it. Okay. Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm curious how many in this room are jewelers or concerned about jewelry? Not so many. How many of you buy jewelry? How many of you are thinking you might buy jewelry for someone else someday? Right, so everyone pretty much essentially is impacted by jewelry, and my role kind of on this panel is to give a bit of an overview. So in 2004, I started an organization, Ethical Metalsmiths, specifically for independent designer jewelers to get more information about their materials, where they come from, and to find sort of safe space in community to start working through some of the challenges within the industry. Why isn't this changing? A little bit of background. I have a master's in fine art, and now I work on policy issues when it comes to mining issues, supply chain traceability, helping everywhere from large company to nonprofits working on the issues to small jewelers in the middle. And this the legacy of large-scale industrial mining is what motivated me to take action. So these are some of the key things that a responsible jeweler starts to look for in their practice. Water is a major issue, but in the environment, where your materials are coming from, the things that you use every day, the things that have to be sourced in a mega way, like gemstones and metals and so on. The processes, if you're making a prototype, if you're sawing, casting, polishing, how you dispose of the stuff you use, the energy it consumes. What about the people that are impacted? For instance, artisanal miners are the sort of small scale version of the mining industry, mining diamonds, mining tin, tantalum, tungsten, gold, of diamonds, a lot of materials, gemstones, etc., happen in a way that's hand done. And with that comes great consequence. Oftentimes they're illegal, they're not formalized, and it presents problems to governments managing where their income is coming from in country. Blasting back out again to the large scale, this is a large scale industrial mine in Nevada. And this big pad that you see here is a cyanide heap leaching pad, where cyanide is sprinkled onto the surface. It goes through the crushed rock that has gold in it. It collects on a bed at the bottom, and the cyanide filled with gold particles runs out into these ponds that are there, that are called pregnant ponds, which I think women should take offense to. But anyway, so what's exciting now compared to 2004 when I started this process is that there are large umbrella organizations on an international, global level helping to deal with the development challenges, for instance, around artisanal mining. How do you best support people that are going to continue mining in that way, but help them improve their lives? So the OECD is one organization. This is exciting. The Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurances is launching its revised standard next week, and they are going to be certifying in the future responsible industrial scale mines, meaning it's going to push the entire mining industry to achieve a standard that it has not yet been challenged to do before. On a small scale, Fairmind is challenging the independent small-scale miner to also achieve an internationally recognized standard. In this case, no child labor, environmental protections are in place. When they export to international locations like the United States, there's traceability from that particular mine all the way to the jeweler's hands in what they're working on and how they're making. Colored gemstones present a whole different issue for the jewelry industry. It is almost all done small scale and artisanally. And so imagine all over the world there are people mining for gemstones and we don't know where they're coming from or how they're getting there. Some jewelers are making headway figuring it out. We have the help of NGOs that are doing studies so that we can better understand the systems that jewelry operates in. There are large organizations and small organizations that are helping to set standards for jewelers to monitor their supply chain. And it's starting to plug people in along the entire way, from the mine to the refiner, to the manufacturer, to the jeweler themselves, to the consumer, so that there can be trust in the jewelry industry along the way. There's still a ton of work to be done, but the Responsible Jewelry Council is one of the international bodies dealing with that. Ethical Metalsmiths, the organization that I co-founded, is doing kind of a very similar thing to the Responsible Jewelry Council, but on a small scale and in a much less bureaucratic way and in a more grassroots way. So instead of kind of a top-down dictation, the people that form the membership of Ethical Metalsmiths are helping to bring it up from here. And they're able to be pioneers of efforts and initiatives that large-scale companies can't do with as much facility. So a small group of jewelers came together when Fairmind wasn't available in the United States. We're talking 21, 22 jewelers, and said, we want Fairmind gold in the United States. Can we work with this organization, Ethical Metalsmiths, to make it happen? So we did. We pooled funds, ordered 2 kilos of gold, which are like 2 bars that are about this big, brought it into the United States. It was coming from a mine in Peru called Aurelsa that I've also visited. And now there is a refiner in the United States where you can order Fairmind gold from regularly, if that is something that you're interested in incorporating into your jewelry. And more consumers will have the opportunity to ask for Fairmind gold. Let's say you're buying your first wedding ring and so on. Another option is recycling materials. So a lot of jewelers are in favor of 100% recycled materials. They step down only a small percentage from new mining. So for those sustainability people that are excited about that, recycling is a tricky one in our industry, but it is extremely important that we have recycling systems in place. This is a project of Ethical Metalsmiths where we take old unwanted jewelry from the community and transform it into new work. So this is an example of kind of a weird donation that comes in. The jewelry artist looks at what's there, creates their design, and then manufactures a new piece only using things that were donated from the project. It's not a business model, it's an education tool. It's a community building strategy. So when it comes to a town, it invites the entire town to donate. If people have making experience, it lets them participate. What's really important in this time we're in now is that we create systems that reward the right behavior so that responsible jewelry can flourish. So to benefit students, Ethical Metalsmiths started a student competition. It's called So Fresh, So Clean. For those of you that are jewelry students, and tell your friends, the deadline is current, June 5th for this particular run. The grand prize is $1,000. Joshua Kosker won it in 2014. It's a student-run committee within the organization. They do the call for entries, they run their website, they interview the winners, they deal with the poster printing as part of the award process. So it's a total grassroots student-run initiative. It's primarily out of Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, but other students can participate in the leadership. So on the left is this year's winner, and on the right is a piece for the second prize, also made by Joshua Kosker out of clementine, dried clementine, orange skins. Take a breather. The next thing that I wanted to share with you, Alexia mentioned the CFDA Lexus Design Challenge. This is another great one. There are very limited opportunities for jewelers and makers and designers to be rewarded for responsible practices. And the more of these kinds of competitions that exist, or if we change the way conventional competitions are that are only rewarding best design, if we can change it so they're rewarding the kind of behavior that we want to see across the industry, better for all of us. A new initiative coming out of the White House is the U.S. Wildlife Trafficking Alliance program. And this is one of the things I'm working on as a consultant for the jewelry industry. We're trying to figure out where animal and natural products are coming into the industry, understanding the issues behind them, and trying to figure out the best ways for us to change that. If you're looking for more opportunities to learn about jewelry and responsible jewelry, at the end of this month, on Thursday, April 28th and Friday, April 29th, is the Gold Conference here in New York City. So it's another place that you can go to get some more information about responsible sourcing topics. It's also going to talk about trends. It's going to be talking about markets, social media, etc. This is a quick slide of some resources that are available if you're at the point where you're ready to buy some raw material to make jewelry. Things that you might want to look at are where your metals are coming from, where your diamonds are coming from, where your colored gemstones are coming from. These are some vendors and suppliers that have established themselves as offering responsible supply to jewelers. And in my role as consultant, I'm always looking for questions and ideas from people. You can sign up to receive emails from me and send me questions that you have. That's it. Thank you very much.
Can you find that list on your website?
Yes. Super fast.
This is also being recorded. If you go to the YouTube channel for the conference.
1 second. Let me open yours. Yours is looked up?
Yeah, it's that one.
Got it. Okay. Just press this arrow.
This one? Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here on behalf of Melissa Joy Manning. My name is Jamie. I am the Design and Development Manager for Melissa Joy Manning. I'm based out of our Soho studio. I attended Syracuse University's College of Visual and Performing Arts, where I studied jewelry design and metalsmithing. And it was there that I gained an appreciation for handmade jewelry and became passionate about social and environmental responsibility. I just have some images of the jewelry. This is actually our lookbook from 2015. As a design and development manager at Melissa Joy Manning, I am responsible for overseeing the production of each new collection from concept to completion. Additionally, I am also responsible for sourcing all the unique and unusual stones and accompanying Melissa on her buying trips. I began working for Melissa nearly 4 years ago, and one of the reasons why I was attracted to working for Melissa was because of her sustainable business practices. Melissa started her business about 20 years ago from Oakland, California. After studying traditional Mexican metalsmithing, she realized there was little opportunity for an artist to make a living wage practicing their craft. She was determined not only to continue her craft in jewelry making, but also to employ other artisans and offer them an opportunity to earn a living wage. At the same time, being a designer inspired by the natural world, it was extremely important to Melissa to have the lowest carbon footprint while pursuing her dreams. This is why, from the beginning, our brand ethos was implemented to support people through local handmade manufacturing, sustainable business practices, and offer a responsible product. Since then, the brand has grown immensely. We distribute to over 300 stores worldwide and opened our own flagship locations from Berkeley, California, New York City, as well as a boutique in the Cobble Hill neighborhood of Brooklyn. All of our jewelry is still handmade by talented artisans using time-honored metalsmithing techniques. We use only recycled sterling silver and gold sourced from an American refining company. Our 2 studios are located in Berkeley, California, and in Soho. Our Soho studio's main focus is creating one-of-a-kind and limited edition pieces, while our Berkeley studio is structured to fulfill orders from our wholesale accounts. Our collection has grown and expanded with the size of the company as well. We still offer a selection of our classic designs, such as our signature hoops, which are offered in many shapes and sizes. Excuse me. But we've also grown into new categories, such as our bridal collection featuring engagement rings and wedding bands made with recycled 18-karat gold and conflict-free diamonds. One of our one-of-a-kind collection, which is mostly what is pictured in the lookbook here, and our limited edition pieces, is largely inspired by Melissa's love for gemstones, rocks, and minerals. Melissa hand selects each and every stone used in these collections and has always been interested in pushing people's perceptions of precious. Additionally, Melissa founded and co-chaired the CFDA Sustainability Committee, won the Lexus Eco Fashion Challenge, and now sits on the advisory board of the CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative. Joining the CFDA was an important moment for Melissa, as it gave her the opportunity to start conversations with other designers about what could be done as a community to support sustainable initiatives. As a member of the advisory board of the CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative, Melissa is given the opportunity to mentor other young brands committed to sustainable business. Melissa is recognized as a leader within the sustainable jewelry industry, but it is the design of our collection that has continually supported our success. The designs are undeniably reflective of our commitment to our company ethos. By only using techniques that are capable of being produced by hand and the use of recycled metals and responsibly sourced stones, the elements create a visual representation and a reminder within the aesthetic of the brand. Coincidentally, the designs appeal to a sophisticated and thoughtful consumer who knows that in the modern world, style and sustainability go hand in hand. And quite a few more photos.
Oh, you don't have to. Okay. So we're just gonna keep it up here.
No slides from me. I'm Blair Lauren Brown, and I'm grateful to be here and thankful to all of you for coming. And I'm sitting with some fabulous people and people that I also know well and have worked with in the past. The Sustainable Jewelry Community is a very close community. It's growing, but it's still very small. So I think we're all very, very cognizant of being connected and community oriented, sharing our resources and sharing our connections and inspiring and motivating each other, which is really nice. It's a good place to be. So I will tell you a little bit about my family and where I come from, because that is ultimately why I ended up where I am. I'm from Alaska. I was born and raised there, and my family has a 115-year history in Alaska. So 1901, my great-grandfather from Germany was a watchmaker, a stone setter, and a jeweler. And he moved over to Alaska with the gold rush, which, 1898 was the beginning of the gold rush in Alaska. So 1901, you can imagine there was absolutely no infrastructure. When you see stories and pictures of mining and gold rush and Alaska back in the day, it's pretty barren. It's people building their own homes out of found materials and chopping down trees and dragging them through mountain passes with animals that are local to the community. And my family was very much a part of that. So while my family wasn't in the actual mining, they were there to build the infrastructure. They essentially worked as kind of an intermediary between money, like gold as currency, and the miners. So my family started doing gold nugget bracelets and gold nugget jewelry. That was essentially how people collected and stored their wealth. There was no banks. There was nowhere to put it other than bury it in a hole in the ground, or, as I'm reading now in this book about the pioneering women of Alaska, they would give it to prostitutes to hold. So this world, this community of very raw and rugged is ultimately how I was raised in Alaska. Like, this history is very much ingrained in my lifestyle. So my family was into hunting and living off of the land and building their own homes, and we have a long history of homesteading, and all of these things are so important to me to continue to share, and a history and a legacy that I think is really important in sharing what we all do, and why we're all here, and how we're all connected as people and individuals. So heritage is ultimately how I got into this. I studied art in college and was going to be a famous contemporary artist, and here I am as a jeweler. I was watching my family run this business from Alaska that was very much driven by tourism culture. So sharing the history of Alaska, but selling mostly to cruise ships and port stores and people coming up to Alaska that wanted trinkets and tokens of their experience. So it was still gold nuggets, still raw gold as it was pulled out of the ground, but modified to express raw Alaskan land. So little mosquito charms and watch bands that had giant ram's heads paved with gold nuggets. And this was definitely for the oil crowd and for the mining crowd that wanted to express their wealth and show that they were hardcore Alaskan, So you'd get these awesome watches or these crazy gold pave, I don't know, bears' heads on these giant chains and overalls. It was amazing. Every once in a while, you'll see stuff like that at antique stores, and I'm still scouring the marketplace trying to find my family's old designs because I no longer have those molds or any of that part of the business in my world. Anyway, so I I watched my grandfather and my dad do this business, and it was slowly dying. It was a trade that wasn't really appreciated, and it wasn't growing into anything new, and it needed to be modified. And so when I was in college, I went and studied with my grandfather in his production facilities and learned how to make gold nugget jewelry. So I did exactly what they did, and eventually ended up like making my own designs and taking this into a slightly new space all through college, just making jewelry for friends and kind of learning all the little intricacies of design. And I fell in love with it. I totally fell in love with making jewelry and designing, and being able to share the story of what my family had done in the history of Alaska. It was a beautiful way to like translate who I was without having to be like, hey, look at me, this is who I am. So anyway, moving into where I am now, I started this brand originally in 2006 in New York, right before the economy tanked. And in 2008, when the economy tanked, so did my business. I was so excited about what I was doing, and so excited about sharing the legacy, and so excited about the story as a mode of sharing sustainability and conservation, that I went back to the drawing board and learned all the things that I thought I was missing, and started again 3 years ago. So this new iteration is 3 years old, and my focus now is developing a brand that ultimately shares this story of conservation and sustainability through production and manufacture, and the heritage relationships that we still maintain, but also taking that and using it as a vehicle to share sustainability on a larger level. So there's three different collections that I'm working on. One is the 1901 collection, which is all recycled gold and silver, and that all comes from a certified green refinery here in the U.S. The next collection is the alluvial collection, which is all raw Alaskan gold nuggets. So I would say about 50% of our gold is raw Alaskan gold, which you can see in further detail probably when this is all over. And then the other collection is our devoted collection, which is our bridal collection. So again, all recycled refined materials, and then ethically sourced gemstones and raw gold nuggets. So mostly that's people coming to us and saying, we want to work with a really sustainable brand. We love your mission. Help us, let's design something together. And so then that's when I get to take it upon myself and share the mission of sustainability and design, and how important it is for us to be working together for conservation efforts. I think ultimately I want to use my brand as a vehicle to share sustainability on a larger scale and help the rest of the industry. So we're working on other initiatives on the back end that have in part been done with ethical metalsmiths. We're working on a resource guide that will help share all the sustainable resources that we can use as jewelers and as people that are kind of tertiary to the industry, and that will be open source. We're also working on creating a collective where gold, like the Fairmined gold that Christina was talking about internationally, but we'll be pulling gold from Alaska. So all be Alaskan old mines that have been in operation for over 100 years. And that my family has had relationships with. So there's full transparency there. I've been to mines up in Alaska. I work hand in hand with these people that I trust and know, and many jewelers that I've worked with have offered to go in with our brand to buy gold from those sources, so that we know we're supporting a community, supporting our backyard, and then in turn translating that message to our consumer. So I'll step down now, and there's plenty of awesome things to be learned in collaboration with all of us. So I think from the questions, you probably get a lot more out of me.
So, and just press the side buttons.
Okay, cool.
And everything you're going to be doing is on the screen.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Wing, and I am the founder and the designer of the brand Wake. A little bit about me.
I come from a background in sculpture from Rhode Island School of Design, and I actually assisted art galleries and artists here in New York before I actually fell into jewelry design. I started off making small and wearable sculptures in my bedroom because I had a hard time finding a job in the recession. This quickly became a collection of jewelry, and it just really has snowballed from there. I feel like it just became something that I realized I was really, really interested in. I loved creating a dialogue with others and building upon something that you can wear and like grow into. And so I launched our debut collection that was more on the sculptural side in 2012, and then we made our debut fine jewelry collection in 2013. So now the jewelry brand is a company that consists of a team of 7 amazing people. We're based in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and our offering has changed from what I describe as experimental jewelry with experimental materials to a line of fine jewelry made of gold and precious stones. They have a subversive, each piece has a subversive twist on the traditional expectation of jewelry. Let's see. We're best known at the moment for our use of opals, diamonds, and our use of negative space. So people really come to us looking for a lighter and like airy take on like how to do a stone setting and something that is more personal in scale and relates to a new generation of fine jewelry customers who are still looking for something that they can grow into and consider an heirloom through the value of the material. To me, the most important thing to know about Wake is that we are first and foremost driven by art and design. This is one of our earrings on the left, and on the right is a sculpture by one of my favorite sculptors, Calder. We put a lot of energy and thought into making jewelry that we consider not only is a beautiful object on its own, a surprising piece of jewelry and is unexpected and yet wearable, but we also put a lot of energy into our photography and try and reconsider how you can shoot it and how those photos like create a world on top of these objects that we're making and selling. This is just a peek at one of our lookbooks from last year. And so mood is like really, really exciting for me. And the photo shoots are one of my favorite parts of having this company. I feel like it really all comes together and becomes something bigger than just making jewelry for me. Our intention through Wake is really to deliver this experience of art directly into your hands. So when you have the piece of jewelry, hopefully you can feel like you're connected to a bigger world of art. So this January, as Alexia already mentioned, we were nominated, or we made it on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, which was a huge surprise and also really exciting. So yay. We were also selected as one of 10 finalists for the CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative, which has also been mentioned a couple of times. So yay, number 2. This CFDA Lexus Fashion Initiative is a really big deal for us. It's a 17-month-long program that challenges fashion designers to make measurable and positive impact through their fashion brands and in an environmentally and socially conscious way. There isn't, as all of these guys have outlined, there isn't a lot of there aren't a lot of models for this in the fashion industry so far, and fashion is such a drive for culture today that I'm so grateful to be part of this initiative and be part of this like initial group of people who are hopefully going to publicize and like carve out more accessible and like bigger conversation for these ethos. So while I wouldn't boast to anyone that Wake is founded on like being an ecological brand first, I do think that we are built on being thoughtful and having a holistic mindset. This, I think, is like the key to good design and also the key to having a long-standing business. And I truly hope that this is going to be a long-standing business of mine. So that's been our big question when it comes to the fashion initiative is like, how can we run a more and more responsible business if we come from a design stance first, if that's, so anyway, I started with my staff. This is a shot from our Instagram from International Women's Day. This is everybody on our team except for one person, including my dog. As the company has grown, I've been sure to provide our team with the support that they need to support me as a designer and also the company owner, as well as our customers, to provide them with great customer service that's like thoughtful and detail-oriented. That includes retail customers and our wholesale customers and just our vendors and all of our partners in general. I think that if our internal like community is strong and healthy, that will seep out to the community outside of our doors. So these ladies, they work an 8-hour day here in New York in the fashion industry, which sadly is not a standard. So I really pride in like their great hours, like normal legal hours. They have vacation time. They make livable wages for here in New York, and their positions are sculpted around actually their personal interests. So I work really hard with them to see what they gravitate towards most, and then we build their positions based off of that. They're lucky because they've come into the company when we're really new and young, and so there's a huge opportunity for them in that way. In addition to this, I encourage them to take classes which Wake helps subsidize to enhance those personal interests and then bring them back into the company and our community. Our subcontractors also are on 47th Street, and they seem to have great conditions, and I know that they're in compliance with New York State because they complain to me about all the audits that they have to go to. But that's something that we'll talk about a little bit more and how to speak with our partnerships there. Next on our list, though, was our studio. This is actually a peek at our showroom area with no jewelry in it or like the actual jewelry equipment, just plants. But it's pretty and like evokes the mood that I like to think that we live in every day. But as part of the initiative, one of the first things we did on top of looking at how we structure the staff and their day-to-day was immediately switching over to increasing our in-house capacity so that we could do more sample making as well as production in general in studio. This not only allowed us to create more cost-effective production systems, but it also allowed us to control where every step of the way of these pieces. Like we have a tighter control of like where we're sourcing items. We know exactly what they are. I think actually everybody here works on that level, but the way we started out made this be a very significant change for us. That's a tangent, sorry. Anyway, we're really excited to have more of a hands-on experience with our jewelry in studio and be able to problem solve and like increase our personal knowledge of the jewelry and the making and be able to then share that with our subcontractors and other jewelers as well who come into our studio. we had to work backwards to then work forwards in this way. So also in our studio, we switched over to all natural soaps and more environmentally friendly pickle. So that was easier. So really our biggest challenges that we're facing right now have been found in trying to communicate with people outside of our studio. That's where things get a little bit more complicated. As everyone here has mentioned, we've discovered through all of our research that it's extremely difficult to know whether your purchases, your material purchases are supporting unethical mining, cutting, trading practices, etc. So we've been putting a lot of energy into this section of the fashion initiative. First, we started by formulating a questionnaire that allows us to start this conversation with our current vendors who really helped me get started, but may not come from an ecological standpoint first. And so this questionnaire has allowed us to ask them in a sensitive, hopefully inoffensive way, how much they can tell us about their supply chain. This has been really, I feel like a lot of jewelers will start in the same place that I did, or they'll start making, when they start scaling things, they'll start subcontracting their work, and they don't necessarily know everything about where everything comes from because you're trying to survive and make pieces at the right time for your wholesale accounts or whatever customers you have. So this has been a very challenging part of our progress because it challenges our personal relationships with people who have supported us. So this questionnaire is really important because it allows us to bridge that conversation. And you can immediately sense whether people have that information or not. It's a comfort thing. You can see it in their behavior, and so you know when to stop the conversation when it feels inappropriate, and then evaluate what to do next. So for those vendors who are unable to get on board with this new initiative and this turnover that we're having to be more responsible, we then have to evaluate whether those relationships are worth making concessions for and like how that affects the rest of our supply chain. I'm sharing this challenge with you because I think it's probably something that other jewelry designers in my position in New York will face. And I'm happy to share more of it in detail later. So part of the solution to this conflict of interest has been to partner with vendors who specialize in supply chain transparency. We have first started by switching over all of our in-house production to recycled gold from non-traceable gold. We're receiving all of our metal from one of the first refiners to guarantee 100% recycled metals. So that was a good first step. We're now considering how we can integrate fair mine gold, which contributes to, which gives back to specific mining communities, as you mentioned. But there's a premium, we have to evaluate how price and the premium on that gold will affect our customers. So that's a longer conversation. So we're starting here with recycled gold in-house. Next is our colored stones, such as sapphires, which we're starting to use a lot more of. We're getting these now from one of the only companies that specializes in traceable colored stones. Some of these stones are even from a partnered mine that contribute, where the funds actually contribute back to supporting the community around the mines with education and health programs. So that's a great start for us as well. With our diamonds, we're currently getting them either as recycled antiques now or We are getting them from another company that specializes in traceable diamonds. They definitely have a higher premium on them, but finding traceable stones at this scale has been very challenging. So I'm willing to pay the premium and eat those extra costs until we see what other options we have. This is a photo of these tiny little diamonds that we put in our jewelry. As you can't really see the diamonds, they're little white specks, but you might be able to read their country of origin on the bags. They say Argyle, which is a mine in Australia, or Canadian, which is another great place to get your diamonds. So that's diamonds. And then for opals, this is really exciting for me, especially exciting on top of everything else that we've done, because we're starting to work directly with the miners themselves and see how much we can do with them. We went to Tucson for the first time in January, which is the biggest gem show in the States, and we met the people who are actually mining the rough out of the ground, and they're also cutting it. This is a couple that we met who specializes in boulder opals. He does all the mining, and she does all the cutting. And it's hard to see in the photo. I think he's actually blocking it, but there's a photo of him in his, I don't even know what it's called, the thing that you drive and it drills into the ground. It looks terrifying in the photo, but it's a photo of him with his 12-year-old son on his lap behind his head. That was really moving because their family is going to grow hopefully into what yours has become, Blair. And I love the idea of supporting them directly and having that real, like, immediate one-on-one conversation with them, which we don't have with maybe like our sapphires, but it's just a different angle on it, and I'm excited to have many different ways of sourcing our stones and many different kinds of relationships that are supporting more than just our vendor who doesn't know anything in New York is one angle of it. Not our specific vendor, a vendor. Okay, so this is pretty much what we've done so far. We're really just at the beginning. And my main goal, again, is to look at the business and improve it in a responsible way, but with a holistic perspective. And so having a transparent supply chain is just part of the process of having a healthy design business. The way I hope to see this work with Wake is that people will still come to us first and foremost for our design, and will then discover that this is the way we operate. I think that every small and big design business, whether they're in jewelry or not, should have this foundation and should work hard to have this foundation. I think it's going to become definitely more acceptable and accessible standard. And I think the healthier your network is as a designer, the more you can actually do with your design. And that, I think, is really the future. So thank you. We have a lot more work to do, but thanks for listening to what we've got so far.
You want to introduce? Don't start yet. Just like introduce it. Okay.
They're moving the computer for the online people to hear while we have the panel discussion. So we'll start in a second.
Okay, 1 second. Lost the mouse. Don't look at yourselves. Is the cord too short? Oh. Oh. That wasn't good. You might, yeah. It's upside down.
Oh, that would.
It's not wanting to screw in either, so.
I think it's going. All right, you're good. Just gonna move that down. All right, you can go.
All right, great. So I think I prepared about 10 questions. We'll see how many we get through, but for the first question, I'd love to hear from Jamie first, but I would love to also hear from all of you. So I think a lot of you touched on this, but maybe we can go a little deeper here. I think for most of us, creating a sustainable company is an incremental process. Nobody starts a company and all at once, like you have everything figured out. So it's a three-part question. How did the company that you work for or your company start? How did you build upon that first step? And what is your next sustainable goal?
Well, as I said before, from the beginning, there were three elements of the business that were really important to Melissa, and that was supporting people, the processes that we make our jewelry, and also the product that we're offering to the consumer. And through producing the collections within our own facilities, well, I guess back to how it started, sorry. Once those three things were really established and not making any concessions in the beginning and getting off on that right foot and not allowing for any gray area is how it started. Where the challenges are as building upon those first steps is that when you do, start to get orders from your consumers, scaling a sustainable company is a lot more challenging than it is scaling a business that you are producing out of a factory overseas, because essentially, there's only so much manpower that you are capable of, and instead of necessarily just like placing a higher quantity order with an overseas factory, you have to hire additional jewelry staff. You have to train them to your quality standards, which is, it's just not a black and white hiring system in terms of the timing and being able to fulfill the demand when the demand does come. So the growth in a sustainable business is definitely slower in that term, in that sense. However, once we were able to do that, and our staff has increased, gradually over time, it has worked out. A little, challenges along the way, but also we've always, kept our practices as green as possible. When we moved to our Berkeley studio is when we actually went through the certification of receiving green certification, which is actually what it's called, green certification from the County of Alameda in California. And really from the beginning, we were really firm on the ethos that we created for the company and not allowing for any concessions along the way has been crucial to our continual growth going forward.
Can you explain something further? So I think what's observing the growth of Melissa Joy Manning, as a company from a distance, it's been mysterious. Like, where is it all produced? I know now where it's all produced, but the illusion, the company puts forth a scale that seems bigger than I think what it actually is. So can you talk a little bit about where the actual production is happening?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that we're a lot bigger than we are. We only have 25 staff members, and that includes our retail staff, and we have 3 stores. So as far as a production and administrative staff, it's actually pretty small. We have 8 jewelers in our California studio, which is where all of our wholesale orders are fulfilled. So after the jewelry goes to a trade show and our accounts, make their deliveries for the months to come, those are all fulfilled through the studio in California. In New York, we only have 2 jewelers, and we produce all of the one-of-a-kind limited edition jewelry, the bridal collection, and all of the first samplings of any design for a new collection. So after, that's really the developmental space, the development space where all the new techniques are produced. They work out the technical side of the design and create a pattern, just like you would for apparel. And that is how then the other staff on the other coast is able to produce the jewelry based off that.
I do kind of want to chime in about Melissa's company as well, just because I've been in this industry for 15 years. I mean, born into it, but been practicing jewelry at some different degree for 15 years. But I can remember, like, if I go back through my tear sheets and my sketchbooks and you name it, Melissa is in there. Like, all of her pieces have inspired me and influenced me throughout the years. And she, her company, has been kind of a beacon for sustainability in jewelry and fine jewelry, which is really important because there's not a lot on blast around sustainability in fine jewelry in particular. And so for Melissa to be sticking to her guns and working hard for the industry as a whole, I think is really, really important. She's built an amazing company around it, and I've been fortunate enough to see all of her studios and offices and partake in some events and do trunk shows with her and sell my jewelry in her stores. And I mean, she's a goddess. It's amazing. We're very different in terms of sustainability, our businesses, mostly because you guys heard all about my heritage story. But her focus has been on gemstones and her recycled gold, which is a big part of fine jewelry. I mean, for the most part, I don't know percentage-wise what sells the most in fine jewelry, but it's mostly large gemstones and colored gemstones and like heavily diamond jewelry. So my jewelry being all about raw gold is a completely different focus. So it's interesting, like, comparing and collaborating on what's happening for the industry going forward in sustainable terms. Like, the conversation is interesting. But to that, next steps in sustainability, there's a lot of like interesting programs that are coming up, and Christina's been kind of like spearheading a lot of those. Melissa has been spearheading a lot of those. I'm working on some. Wing has been working on a lot of things from a totally different direction. Whereas like Melissa's and my businesses were driven and started with sustainability being the core, and knowing that that's where we were going to build everything off of. Wing is doing a completely opposite direction, but as a new young business, probably a little bit more accessible than new businesses that are around for 15 years or 20 years that's trying to go backwards and work through all their suppliers and all their supply chains. So I think for all of us as a whole, it's really important that we start sharing all of our resources in sustainability so that new designers coming into the field can access and tap into those immediately, because then it won't be more expensive and it won't be less accessible, it'll just be the standard.
Yeah, I agree. I think that actually Christina and Melissa have carved out I mean, you guys have been so inspiring for someone like me to understand what can be done, whether it's hard work or not. Like, you've carved out a lot of things that have made gaining the suppliers or just the information like that I've been looking for to like improve my business in a responsible way. You made it easier because you guys fought for it, and I really appreciate that. It's given me the opportunity to even say that, like, I'd like to not be a sustainably driven brand, but have sustainability be just the way we're founded on. And I hope we don't even have to talk about it, because I hope people are bored, like, at a certain point, and just expect us to have already taken care of it. So that's really exciting, and it's also just, yeah, there's such a, there was a certain point for me where like a breaking point for me when I realized that this was all a huge open conversation and that everyone just wants to like help each other. I think it's like easy to be a little bit weird about it, like when you first start out, but the more friends and like partnerships that you make, the wider conversation that you have, the more you all have to work with. And that's really something that I've learned from everybody here. And I hope that you guys will really know that for whatever you do, it can't not be true.
Yeah, and I'm sure the more you can support those smaller vendors that are, bringing these responsible initiatives, the better for them, the more they can grow. The more maybe bigger vendors who are getting, who are losing business can realize, oh, we better jump on that boat, because that's the way everyone's moving forward. I guess going to the customer, what opportunities have you had to engage with your customers about what sustainable jewelry is and what it should be? To directly give it to the customer.
Sure. I know for us, we really have two different types of customer. And the first customer is, the one who's interested in sustainability. They come to us, they're already very educated, very knowledgeable, and there's not really a lot of information that we need to provide to them. They've come and they've sought us out for that product. But the second customer that we have is coming to us simply because they, saw the jewelry, they like the jewelry, they're attracted to it, and they're unaware of our involvement in sustainability and our production methods. But what's really exciting about that is that when we do inform them of our practices, their eyes are just completely open to, the possibility of other products that they're also purchasing, and the idea that a luxury good that is something that they're attracted to simply just for the style can be sustainable. So then they're thinking about these other purchases that they're making, and they're seeking out, and at least the thought process has started to seek out other products that they are already consuming, and seeking out other brands that are, within the same, industry as us in other categories.
I think it's to what you're saying, and there's definitely a very clear split between the people that come to you because they're interested in sustainability, because they know that your brand is engaged in sustainable practices in some way, shape, or form, and then other people that are coming to you because you're a fashion brand. And that's one of the differentiators for, I think, all of us, is that we're all we're fine jewelry, but in the fashion space. So we're not just fine jewelry in the fine jewelry space. There's a very traditional fine jewelry world that operates completely on a completely different schedule than we do. Our production schedules are in line with the fashion culture. We all sell to specialty retail and boutiques that sell apparel as well, and we also sell to jewelry stores as I don't know what percentage of our business, probably a substantial part of the business. We operate on a calendar that's driven by fashion, and as you mentioned earlier, we're all we use fashion as kind of our megaphone to speak to our culture and who we are, and to relate to people oh, I see how you're dressed, I like it, I think we should be friends. So when people are shopping with us, they're looking at our jewelry as a way to express who they are, and so that's first and foremost for most of our shoppers, and that's how we all design as well. I think we've all mentioned that our ethos is about art and design first, and then sustainability second. But if they can be synonymous, fabulous, and hopefully one day they will be.
You want to add anything?
I think you said it all.
It was just something funny. Imagine jewelry that is just sustainable jewelry. What does that even look like? It has to have design on top of it. Otherwise it doesn't exist. Anyway, it's kind of funny to think about trying to separate them.
Well, it's interesting because I think sustainability is also it's a lifestyle. It should be a lifestyle. If you're representing a sustainable brand and you're putting that on blast, then it needs to be your personal ethos as well. As a founder, as an owner, I'm guessing that your employees start to take on that concept of sustainability as they learn more about it. And
find some plastic in the garbage.
Yeah.
What is this?
The perfect example is
Trying to
we didn't have water, and I was like, well, maybe we need water. Someone's choking up, and then
I don't even want this in front of me.
the two of them were like, no, we have our own bottle, I was like, okay. I agree. We shouldn't have water in plastic bottles.
I'm like, if you guys need things, I've got you. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things about the way we live our lives that can be and further expression of this. And I think it's really important to start considering this. It's like, where do your clothes come from? Like, what does your bedding come from? Is your mattress like made out of latex that comes from? I mean, I could go on and on and on.
That's when it gets really hard.
It's hard. It's a challenge, but it's a responsibility. You know, I mean, and that's what we're doing is taking on this responsibility by saying that we're a sustainable jewelry. By sitting on a panel together, we're taking on that responsibility to say like, yeah, look at me, investigate me, and I'm going to make mistakes, of course, and I'm going to slip, and it's hard. And even though I grew up this way, like, it's hard. And I have my moments when I'm like, oh God, I really am thirsty. First of all, like, what happens when I take that bottle? Am I going to feel guilty about it? And then because I say I'm sustainably minded, what happens when I get photographed drinking out of that bottle? Like, it's not fun. It's yeah. And that's why I have a big community around me.
Whenever you need.
This question is for Christina, but anyone can add to it, because we were having a conversation about this. Is sustainable an appropriate term to describe jewelry, or is there a better term we could use?
It's a good question for the whole panel. I mean, I don't think it's a great term, no, to be direct about it. But I think once you start looking at the way companies are being shaped and formed in the way that's being described by these three, where it's a very holistic picture, it's not sustainable in the sense that it relies on newly mined metal, and a mine is a finite supply of material in the ground. By its very nature, mining is not sustainable. So to call it sustainable jewelry, it just right now it doesn't make sense. Even if you're using 100% recycled, which it is fabulous that in the last 10 years in our industry, we've been able to isolate the pathways for metals so that we can actually verify that it's coming from kind of a post-consumption space and creates a closed loop cycle for metal to be able to be reused over and over again. It always has been. So on one hand, for those of you that are really familiar with sustainability principles like cradle to cradle, gold, for example, is the ultimate technical nutrient. If you're talking about William McDonough cradle to cradle, it becomes itself over and over and over and over and over and over again. You can just keep reusing it forever. Our habits of consumption are part of why it is not sustainable, right? We take on, we collect without returning very much of that material to renew the recycled supply stream when it could be. Gold is even more convoluted. Blair alluded to this, it is a commodity. You are, yes, you're buying a design, but sometimes that design is purely a vehicle for owning a material that is worth something in an investment capacity. So with gold, we're competing with people that buy bars of gold that have no meaning, no magic, no symbolism, no relationship to artistry, nothing. It's just a pure commodity. So jewelry and consumption of bars of gold are competing in a space that makes it really difficult. Sustainability when it comes to precious gemstones is another interesting one, because there the holistic perspective is really essential. People have been mining stones for centuries. They're going to keep mining stones for centuries. It's my guess. We keep asking for them to mine stones. For some people, it's the only livelihood they have available to them. How could an industry all of a sudden say, oh, well, we can't say exactly where these come from, and those people don't have, their kids are working with them in the mine, therefore we can't buy from them? That would create a consequence, an unconscionable consequence that we couldn't bear, because we would have been taking away someone's livelihood. So the term sustainability for jewelry, like if you start to open up any complexity, it's there. And in the complexity, I don't think we can really call it sustainable. We have to rely on traceable. We have to rely on transparency. So can you trace it to where it's going? Once you know where it's coming from, you can decide how you want to help the situation on the ground, how you want to improve practices on the ground. If you don't know where it's coming from, and that's been the first step for the entire industry, is like to try to drill down on where our stuff is coming from in the first place. Then once you know, then you can start looking at the systems that support it and start creating solutions within there that are better and better. Consumers tend to force us to oversimplify the way that we present the information in a way that isn't necessarily good for the concept of sustainability as a global initiative. Does that make sense? Like, you want to know exactly where it comes from. You want to think it didn't hurt anybody in the process. You want to believe that the people were taken care of. You want. And an industry like ours is catching up. Actually, every industry on the planet is catching up to these ideas of that our practice of consuming can in fact change real lives, improve the environment, etc. And jewelry is just another one of those things that we consume that, if done right, can have incredible benefit across the globe. That's how
Anyone want to add? Moving on. All right. I guess the next one I had here was the jewelry industry is massive, and sadly, a lot of big companies don't seem to be concerned with the environment, so social justice, or traceability. What can smaller companies do to bring these matters to the forefront and involve the larger industry?
I'm immediately thinking about No Dirty Gold, and that was when Christina was still managing your organization that she started. You started.
Yeah, that campaign and Ethical Metalsmiths launched in the same year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it was in the air.
I remember. I mean, this is the first iteration of my business. The first time I tried to take the family gold business to New York into the fashion crowd, and No Dirty Gold was 2006, 2007.
Yes, actually 4. So it was
2004.
Mhm, that's
Wow.
when that launched. Yeah. Years.
Holy cow.
Dating us.
Yeah. So what a cool campaign. But it was, I mean, you can speak more to the details of it, but I think it was an interesting one that definitely allowed smaller jewelers and larger jewelers to be part of something awesome. And I think it was a campaign that started with like some little guys getting on board and enough momentum from little guys signing a pledge saying like, yes, we want this, that the bigger guys felt like they had to get on board. So I don't know if you want to talk about or tell them what the crux of it was.
Yeah, I mean, the No Dirty Gold campaign, one of the key people in that is a jeweler named Toby Pomeroy. And if you start to unpack the history of responsible jewelry in the United States, Toby Pomeroy's name will come up again and again and again. Toby Pomeroy is the reason Hoover and Strong, one of our refiners, carries 100% recycled material. He's like the instigator of that process. He was one of the first signers of the No Dirty Gold pledge. His company is out of Oregon, Corvallis. He's out of Corvallis, Oregon. And he was one of the first jewelers to bring fair mined materials to the United States, just on the side. It was like, he went on a journey, went to learn about what those mines were like, brought it back and started to incorporate it into his practice. So in response to Alexia's question, the small independent jeweler has a pioneering opportunity that cannot be matched by large industry. It absolutely cannot. It would be so difficult for a large corporation to say all of a sudden, I'm going to start only sourcing my material from this particular mining community and wherever, because they're not producing enough material. The supply isn't consistent enough. It takes too long to create those relationships. But the individual jeweler can literally go visit the mine, go to Alaska, visit the mine, go to Peru, visit the mine, make a relationship with the people there, come back, use some of that gold to make a body of work that has a story, and then that story goes out into the world, and all of a sudden you've transformed something that nobody even knew anything about before. Like, it's amazing. It's cool. The big companies, they have to work with so much legal crap before they can make a move. And there are, I mean, some of the biggest jewelry companies in the United States, publicly traded companies, are equally involved in the responsible jewelry effort at a scale that makes sense for their companies, and on levels that are for their companies. So they can influence where gold is coming from in Africa, catch its choke point at a smelter. The smelter is the facility where the rock is actually first melted down and crushed and dealt with to get the gold out of it, not the refiner that makes it into the special carats that you know and are familiar with. And they've figured out, these are big businesses that have teamed up across industries, electronics industries that deal with metals, jewelers that deal with metals, and so on. And now they're able to trace from the smelter down the line where their materials are coming from, and we're getting even closer to taking it to each individual artisanal mine site in the Congo, for example. So it's this working at the scale that is appropriate for the changes you can make makes sense, but I still think the independent jeweler has like an incredibly powerful role to play, not only in what you can do in your sourcing, but how you tell the story and how that can change people.
And I think that like the consumer's perception is changing too, to like appreciate really what's happening with independent jewelers too. There's definitely like a artisanal jeweler, small jeweler, artisan jeweler movement that's happening and being appreciated now, like it hasn't been in years past. So you're seeing more like free-form jewelry. You're seeing more like small batch productions and capsule collections and collaborative collections and really interesting stuff. So I think that like the artistry in the smaller movement is being appreciated, and thus we'll see that story more fluidly throughout fashion and design and jewelry.
3 weeks ago, there was various stakeholders in the jewelry industry came together for the Jewelry Industry Summit. Interestingly, this year, the focus was responsible sourcing practices. I know several of you attended. Do you have any observations on that event? And anything you could share?
Wing and I and Christina were three of us were there. There was a lot of momentum and positive energy. The time definitely feels right for change within the industry. There were representatives from big businesses of our size, which we were definitely on the very, very small end of the spectrum in terms of company size. And I think it was really informing for everyone to have the conversations with each other, because it was the challenges for a small business are very different from a large business and nearly non-existent for a large business. And I think it was really eye-opening for the representatives of the larger businesses to learn about the challenges that smaller companies have, especially in terms of auditing your supply chain and making investments in just, proving the sustainability that you already have in place, or the responsibility that you already have in place. It's not, necessarily that the systems and processes aren't there, but, paying for the auditing that comes in hand with getting the marks of approval are sometimes the biggest challenges out there. And
you have to do it regularly too.
yeah.
I mean, it was so eye-opening for me because it's really my first year diving into any of this stuff in general, and so to follow up the I don't know, conflicting, to say the least, like landscape of what is like Tucson, the gem show, where there's just so many people who don't have any accountability on their amazing stones, so you can't buy them. Or I couldn't buy them. I was like, okay, no. But it was really interesting. It's just like, well, gosh, like before you go to a summit like this and meet and see what everyone else is doing and see what like audits and like compliance laws there are out there, you just feel like, gosh, there's just nothing. Like you have no info. And so it was really interesting to hear what the scope of the industry on sustainability specifically and traceable sourcing is looking like right now, and what bigger companies are doing and what smaller companies could try to do but are challenging for other reasons like monetary sometimes. But I actually did hear that the audits can be cheaper. They're also like based on your scale of business. Someone from the peers was telling me that it's not actually like $8,000. It's actually more like, could be like $780, like under $1,000, which is a huge difference for a small company. So there's just, I mean, we learn a lot of stuff, a lot of details like that about what's possible to hopefully plant some seeds for some action down the road. But gosh, it was really enlightening for me to meet such a variety of jewelry industry professionals.
Yeah, like imagine, so I don't know what your level of experience is in jewelry, you know, as consumers or as makers or as observers, etc. But you intersect with other industries all the time. You buy clothing, you buy shoes, you buy appliances, you buy electronics. Imagine representatives of the United States jewelry industry at all levels, huge companies, nonprofit organizations that are monitoring, trade groups that are kind of overseeing the marketplace and in wanting to encourage jewelry consumption. Representatives of specific material groups, the Platinum Guild, diamond traders, individual people that travel and own mines in Brazil and are working on creating legal recognized miners in Brazil in a system. A woman who is in Canada does the Diamond Development Initiative, which is going to be bringing the first fair trade certified diamonds to the world. And imagine all these people, 150 of us, sitting under one roof talking about how to make the jewelry industry better. Does that not make you feel good about the jewelry industry? I mean, that's pretty exciting. That was, I think a lot of us came away from that event thinking, wow, we could get some stuff done here because we are willing to sit under the same roof and talk to each other for 2.5 days outside of our regular lives and understand each other better. I think it's gonna hopefully happen now much more often. So this was sort of the year of getting to know each other and understanding the system better. And I think next year we're gonna be seeing what we accomplished over the course of this year and drilling down a little further. And then I'm hoping, you know, like by 5 years down the road, we will have made some concrete steps as a collective. So it's quite an exciting time to be in the thick of building something. It's like when you're in the middle of an art project, you know, you're in the middle, the critique hasn't happened yet and you're totally working. Super good.
And it's open to the public. You can pay for the ticket. So you guys should really look into it if you're interested in these topics. It's anyone can join. Look it up. It's gonna, I don't know when the next one is gonna be.
This was the first year that it ever happened. So even just getting that first one on the calendar was a really big accomplishment.
So, like, it's also a huge accomplishment because if you start thinking about, you know, talking about the nature of business and trade organizations, you know, big business corporations, trade organizations, small artisans, and the moderating bodies, like, there's competition, like, in transparency. So one of the most interesting things about, like, moving towards transparency versus sustainability, let's say, is that everybody wants to be right, first to the table or pushing through their motives. Like, I need to make sure that, like, recycled gold is #1 on what makes jewelry sustainable because that means that my business is #1 versus fair mine gold or versus local gold or versus, you know, recycled jewelry being turned into, you know, I mean, there's competition in this space. So for everybody to get together and start talking about the same things, it's really, really impressive. And hopefully it will continue to move in that direction. But that's just policy in any industry. And it's a scary place to play when you're you're a jeweler and like an artist and wanting to run a, consider it business, but now you have to start talking to lawmakers and
NGOs.
yeah.
US government.
Yeah, the government, I mean, and like international organizations, and you don't know what international law looks like versus local law. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, then you understand why it's so challenging to get like Fairmine Gold here. I mean, do we have time to keep going?
Yes, we have 4 more minutes.
Okay,
3
exactly.
more minutes.
4 minutes, 3 minutes maybe. So, with Fairmine Gold as an example, like there was this rumor going around that there just isn't enough Fairmine Gold. The mines can't produce it. Like it's just they're not yielding enough. Like that's why like I've spoken to so many jewelry designers who are frustrated with that. Like that Fairmine Gold just isn't possible for us to use. But it's just I learned at this summit that it's not true. We spoke with people who had worked with Fairmine, people who spoke directly with the VP from Hoover and Strong on who brought in that Fairmine Gold for the first time into the States. And it's just so much more complicated than that. Like it's not that the gold isn't there. The mines are yielding the gold. It's available, but it's hard to transport. Like they have the gold from Peru, but they are having trouble getting more from another mine in Colombia that they partnered with because this blew my mind. They can't get insurance to bring the gold from the mine to the airport to then fly it over here. That's just insane. It's there, and they've like signed on for it, and we want it, and they can't move it. Literally can't go in a car.
So crazy. Like for 2 years on the first Fairmine buy, I mean, jewelers were like waiting. I was the one in the middle of all those phone calls. Why don't we have our gold yet? I'm like, well, you don't have your gold yet because we don't have insurance. We don't know who's gonna ship it. Why don't I have my gold yet?
But it like really like it like deleted all the myths.
Yes.
Like immediately, it was like, oh, it's not just that like. It's just not, I don't know, you just make stuff up when you're like, I can't get the gold, you're like, and you don't know the reason. You just make stuff up, you're like, it doesn't exist, I guess. Like but when you hear a concrete reason like that, it's like security and like people's lives, like it really puts things in perspective. That's another reason why going to the summit is awesome. That's just one example of many insights.
We have one person dying to ask a question.
I was just wondering, can we ask?
We have like 2 minutes, so.
Just wondering if one of you could talk about, I mean, I'm sure there's some investment required to change the skills of the people who mine these things or change the mining processes that have been like farms, right? Going from the way it is to organic, it takes a few years, different And so who does the onus lie on to change the investment? Is it on the miners? Is it on the jewelers? Is it an entire organization? Like what drives it?
With Fairmine, it's typically a 3-year process, and the way that the investment comes to cover the costs of that 3-year process, to educate the miners, work them through training, update the equipment, all of the different things that they need to do. Some mine sites take much longer. Some are going to need maybe a less stringent standard to be able to meet first, et cetera. But it's been big international development banking funds. It's been like United Nations funds. And it's also been really amazing partnerships by companies like Chopard, who, last year, the Palme d'Or was made out of Fairmine gold, and Kate Blanchett was wearing amazing white gold Fairmine earrings, and those were Chopard brands. So, and there's new watch, so it takes that kind of a company investment to do that, but it's a process. Yeah, that was.
Do we have any more time?
Time's up.
We're up, but I mean, are you gonna be around?
Yeah.
You can go out in the hallway, ask questions, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. But thanks everyone for coming. Thank you guys.
Do you need the room for something else?
The sustainability fashion panel is coming in here, so we're gonna set that up, and then you guys can go hang out in the hallway, ask all the questions you want.
Oh, yeah, this, yeah.
We were chatting.
Thank you.